The mystery player Chelsea FC should sign in order to improve their defense is... Not so fast, not so fast. Welcome to the channel. Welcome to KGX to the Z TV. I am your boy KG. We are going to be talking all things Chelsea Football Club, amongst other things. Other Premier League teams, other teams around Europe, competitions, and so forth. But the purpose of this video is to highlight one player that we should definitely be looking at and definitely be looking to sign this transfer window before it ends. So that's the end of August 31st, in order to help what has been a shaky defense, to say the least, in preseason so far under new manager Enzo Maresca. So just to kind of summarize things and what we've seen so far from the U.S. tour, we've seen a defense where it's been extremely shaky, right? We've seen characteristics like a very high line, sometimes even with our center backs coming up man-to-man marking well into, almost into our attacking third. We've seen center backs across the back line. We've seen fullbacks, Reece James, Gusto, Chilwell. We've seen Gusto and James inverting. We've seen Gusto high and left, almost as a winger. So we've seen a bunch of different options in terms of the center back, the central center back position. But the characteristics are starting to take shape, and the expectations from Maresca of what he wants his defense to look like is starting to see, you're starting to see the blueprint, and you're starting to see what he exactly wants out of each position. Obviously, we haven't played a real game with the lights turned on, but we've seen bits and pieces. We've seen some folks that he definitely appears to trust, and folks that would probably you would probably believe that they would be starting match week 1 when we face City at home. But to say that we've been shaky in defense is a huge understatement. We've seen the likes of Wrexham, we've seen the likes of Celtic, Man City put 4 past us. I think we've given up to this at this particular moment, obviously with Inter Milan being our last preseason warm-up before the Premier League kicks off. But we've given up, I want to say, 12 goals, the only in maybe 5 games, with the only game that we haven't conceded a goal was against Club America, and they played completely different in terms of how they attacked us when compared to the likes of Wrexham, the likes of Celtic, and the likes of Real Madrid, and the likes of Man City. So one thing I've got to give the board and the ownership credit for, right, is scheduling. We've scheduled some really good teams, right? So you've got Celtic, so champions of the Scottish League. You've got Club America, champions of the Mexican League. You've got Real Madrid, champions of the world, as well as La Liga champions, Champions League winners. You've got Man City coming off of the treble. They ended up winning the 4-peat last year. And then even our next friendly with Inter Milan, champions of Serie A, did very well 2 years ago. But they were in the Champions League final. A very, very well-drilled side, established starting 11, is established quality internationals almost at every position. So the competition that we faced has been a good, apart from Wrexham, has been a good, in Club America to a certain extent, has been a very good preview of what is to come in the Premier League. And to be honest with you, what we should expect from a club that has seen its luster and have seen us kind of dip our standards, so to say. So some of the things that, getting back to the defense, some of the things that we really are lacking right now, right? So we know the drama and the constant state of influx of change and players coming in, young kids coming in. Every time you open up Twitter, you see Fab linking us to a new wonder kid from either Brazil, Argentina, France, wherever, right? So it's obvious that the scouting department has a certain set of parameters that they want to look at when it comes to who we are going to bring into the club. Whether or not what that means that we are looking to bring players in simply to flip them and turn a profit, I'd like to think that some of the kids probably do come in with that mind. But when you're buying players in that 15 to 20 to $25 million price range, you really need to develop those kind of players, and it's going to take 2 or 3 seasons of good development, whether that's with Chelsea Football Club, whether that's out on loan. We know that there's loan limitations now, which is a far big difference compared to the Chelsea loan army underneath the Roman days, where we were sending 5 kids, 6 kids to Vitesse, kids all across the championship, and a bunch of other loans. So you know that if you want to develop those kids, that you need them to play to develop, not only in terms of their technical levels and things like that, but also in terms of, physically, they need minutes, right? The best teacher for kids is experience, and experience comes by way of playing, whether that be in the championship, whether that be in France at Strasbourg, whether that be all different destinations. There's a plethora of domestic leagues all across Europe. So we know that we are going to have our hands cut out in trying to manage the squad, and especially Enzo Maresca, right? Second year coach, came from the championship, prior to that was a Pep protege. So we know he has experience when it comes to being around the best, right? We've seen that with Arteta over at Arsenal, where never managed a top flight team, was Pep's number 2 for a number of years, and then all of a sudden took a huge job at Arsenal Football Club, one of the biggest clubs, not only in England, but one of the biggest clubs in the world with a long and storied tradition, right? So the expectations for him to come in, Maresca to come in, he has his work cut out for him, to say the least, right? So seeing as though the defense has been very, very shaky and questionable, what we're looking for in terms of personnel and qualities that we need to stabilize the defense, stabilize the back line, get us all on the same page, is first and foremost an organizer / leader, right? We don't need, not necessarily a leader in the Thiago Silva sense, but definitely an organizer in the sense of Thiago Silva, right? You need the back line to all be on the same page. If someone steps up, you need that back line to hold the high line, try to play people off sides, right? We've seen us just get killed with balls and switches and diagonals over the top, which means that folks are just doing recovery sprints, right? So that's another characteristic that we need. We need somebody who has the pace to recover, especially if we're going to keep that line very high. I envision that over the course of the year, Maresca will play with dropping that line a little bit deeper, depending on who we're playing, right? And depending on the nature of the competition. But we definitely going to need that recovery place. You're going to need someone now in the modern game. One of the characteristics of a good center back is always their ability on the ball. In that central position, you're going to need somebody who can break lines with passes into either the number 10's feet. So you're thinking Palmer, or those advanced 8s in terms of Maresca's system. You're thinking of Nkuku, Cole Palmer, maybe Chukwuemeka there, at times Enzo, Dewsbury Hall. So you're going to need to be able to play those balls fast and on the ground into the feet of Jackson as well, and all those other folks that are going to play in that kind of attacking trident, in order to break those lines and kind of create the numbers advantage that Maresca wants. You're not going to really need someone in that central position to spray diagonals. That's more for the wide center backs, because of the angle, the nature of the defense is shifting over. When the ball comes, they're always going to leave space, and that right back or that left back or left center back, right center back on the opposition team is always going to be checking over their shoulder to see where that wide runner is, whether that be Mudryk, whether that be Nani, Pedro Neto's come in, and things like that. So we're going to rely on those positions for those diagonals. Obviously, there's always going to be opportunities. David Luiz under Conte was very, very good on the ball and could play those diagonals from that central position as well, and could play those lofted balls over the top. It depends on how teams approach us in terms of their setup. If they're dropping deep and allow us to have the ball and we are forced to break them down in their low blocks, where we've seen that we've struggled with it over the last couple of years, then obviously those opportunities are going to be there to play those balls over the top. So you're going to need somebody calm on the ball. you're going to need somebody that fits into the transfer ethos of what the club is now, which is a good age profile. So preferably somebody under 25, 26. So, we're not going to be looking at the likes of Mats Hummels, who's a free agent and 38 years old, doesn't have the pace to play at a top team in the Bundesliga anymore. Why would he be able to come in and do that for Chelsea Football Club? If he came in, he would be a massive, massive liability. We're going to need to look for somebody in a decent price range, right? We're not going to be spending the $100 million or 100 million pounds, euros, like we did on Caicedo, like we did on Enzo, 50, 60, 70, whatever we actually spent in the final accounting numbers on Mudryk. So we're going to need that, right? And you think about all those characteristics, and you think about who in the league, in the Premier League, who across Europe has those kind of characteristics and would be open to a move, right? We know it's going to be very hard for us to attract certain types of players, like even like the Olise, who want Champions League football, who want even Europa League football, want a team that's established in that top four. We're fighting to get back into that top four. We're fighting to get back into the Champions League and things like that. So we need somebody that is willing to take a jump, but doesn't want to take that step back. And that's no disrespect to Chelsea. That's just where we are these days, right? So the first name that pops to my mind, Mark Gahey, right? England international, Chelsea through and through in terms of the academy, 24 years old, good on the ball in terms of competent. He's not a John Stones. He's not a Virgil van Dijk. He's not a sexy player in terms of his passing, but he's very competent on the ball. We've seen that. Great recovery pace that he's displayed when he was with England in the Euros, and he played very well, right? A lot of folks going into that Euros, if they highlighted one area of weakness for the England international team or national team, it was the defense, right? Kyle Walker, John Stones, Gahey, and whoever the left back was going to be, and ultimately ended up being Luke Shaw until he did what Luke Shaw does and got hurt. But that defense held its own. It was the attack. It was the Harry Kanes. It was the those kind of folks, the Jude Bellinghams, the Fodens, that sort of, I don't want to say let England down because they made it to the final, but those were the folks that if you look back and say, which three areas, midfield, defense, actually four areas, goalkeeper, midfield, defense, and attack, which of those areas was the biggest cause for concern, Southgate aside, right? And it was definitely the attack. You walk away from the Euro seeing defense played very well. Gahey played very well. He made a couple of mistakes. I remember him letting a ball bounce, getting over his head, pulling the guy back, getting a yellow, but he did have the recovery pace to get back there. He made up for a couple of mistakes, which is going to happen on the international level. That's his first major tournament on the senior side. And he walked away from that tournament with his head held very high and his reputation just skyrocketing. Like I mentioned before, he's a Chelsea kid. And one of the more interesting developments is that we do have a sell-on when it comes to Gahey. So if he moves, and he's been heavily linked with Newcastle, if he were to go to Newcastle, we would obviously get a certain percentage of that. But being as though Crystal Palace is interested in Trevor Chalobah, and we've seen the rumored price tags of anywhere from 20 to 30 million. Personally, I love Chalobah for what he is, and that is a good squad player. He is not he's not good enough to be a starter on a team with top four aspirations. That's just the nature of the beast. I love the Cobham kids. We have one of the best academies in the world. It's been proven time and time again for the amount of talent that we produce. Some of them always don't make it into the first team. Some of them go and have careers elsewhere. That's the job of an academy, is to put these kids into positions where they can make a money playing professional football, whether that be at Chelsea or whether that be somewhere else. So there is that interesting dynamics. We could potentially explore a move like we did in the Ian Maatsen to Aston Villa. Kellyman comes back, and I know there were a lot of PSFR and FFP shenanigans that kind of were involved in that, right? In an ideal world, Kellyman is never worth, 19 million, whatever we paid for him. But that would definitely knock the price tag down. Because he's at Crystal Palace, he's not on very high wages in terms of the grand scheme of things. So being as though we sort of have a wage structure now, we could definitely put him on wages that would be a huge bump up from his what he's currently earning at Palace, to what kind of is the standard for our squad, considering that he is a established international now, 24. So he's sort of coming into his prime as a defender, right? You're going to 25 to 30ish, in terms of those peak years for defenders at this particular level. So there are a lot of positives in terms of bringing him in, and a lot of positives that we can offer him even over the likes of Newcastle, right? We know they have a ton of cash, but because of FFP and PSFR, they can't spend that cash. So we know that they potentially, have had to sell either one of Gordon, who's been heavily linked to Newcastle, Isak, which the rumors kind of died down, and then you've got City, who now has a boatload of cash, or always had a boatload of cash, but even more cash now, with the sale of Alvarez over to Atletico. So we know that they've been potentially looking for somebody that can kind of step into the shoes of KDB, who's in his last year of his contract. Saudi's been calling him. They'll probably keep him for this year, let him go to Saudi on a free, just out of loyalty and just out of respect for all that he's done for Manchester City. So we know that Newcastle, they have proven that they can identify good players and sort of bring good players in, right? They've brought in Lewis Hall from us. They've brought, like I mentioned before, Isaac, Bruno G, Anthony Gordon. So they've got they've got some attractive players. Eddie Howe is a pretty attractive coach in terms of play style and to play for. So we know that there's some competition in there. But if Chelsea and Newcastle were to compete head to head for Mark Gahey, with how aggressive this board is, and when they want a player, they tend to get that player, unless it's Olise, who, in my opinion, turned us down instead of the opposite way around. I think the club kind of spun it to look good in terms of the PR and things like that. But Gahey is a player that we should be looking at. A lot of other clubs should be looking at as well, right? You look at clubs like Manchester United, who just got in Matthias de Ligt. I think the rumor cost was 45 plus another 5 in add-ons and things like that. So, you look at Gahey versus de Ligt. De Ligt might have the bigger name, right? Ajax took him to the Champions League semifinals, made his big move to Juventus, didn't work out, made another big move to Bayern, didn't work out. Now he's on his third big club, and he's still only 24, 25, 26-ish. So we know that price range, when compared to players like that who have moved in this particular market, is a good price range. So to me, it makes absolute sense for us to get them. I don't know how or the circumstances around him leaving the club and how he felt. Obviously, players like him and other players from our academy want to play. They want to get game time. They don't want to go out on loan. So there could be some backstory like that, where he left on good terms, and it was just a matter of, at the time we had more senior and more accomplished defenders. Obviously we were under Roman, so it just could have been a situation that was good for both parties. You go out there and develop, and then we'll always keep an eye on you. I don't know whether or not we have a buyback clause in terms of, do we have like the right of first refusal, but Mark Gahey should be the center back that we are targeting in order to help fix our defense. So appreciate everyone stopping by. Hit that like button, hit that subscribe button, and we will see you on the next one. Peace.